All right, I believe we're recording. Welcome to ConnectStrat and Ask a Strategic Coach for our webinar this week. Before we get started with our guest, I wanted to introduce a bit about who we are and what we do. We are focused on vision, strategy, execution, and impact. The tip of the spear for us is EOS, and then we wrap around leadership, one-on-one coaching. We do more work in the strategic realm, and then life and legacy planning. And then we're here today to also welcome our newest member to the team, Jena Knight, who's focused on Kolbe and is going to hit a lot more on assessments. Before I introduce Jena more deeply, let me introduce our team. I'm Jameson West. I've been around the IT services channel for over a quarter century, as have the rest of the coaches. We're all old guys, and we've been very focused on helping the channel and the community and the IT services community grow through this type of consulting. So I had an MSP in Seattle. I've relocated into Las Vegas, and I'm focused here. Brett, why don't you introduce yourself?
I really wish you hadn't led with the quarter century because it makes me feel old. So my name is Brett Jaffe. I'm also one of the strategic coaches here with ConnectStrat. Very much like Jameson, it's been a quarter century. Just realized just on this call, we have over a century of experience, which is really scary. I also had an MSP for over 20 years in the greater Boston area. Got into the vendor space, sold my vendor to another vendor, worked there for a while. Kind of made the rounds, so to speak, through MSP and the vendor channels. Now I'm back consulting full time. I also run a software company called Audit, which is a sales presentation software for MSPs. And I split my time between Audit and working with this great team at ConnectStrat. And Fred?
Hi, my name's Fred Gentian. I'm a strategic coach with ConnectStrat, also a professional EOS implementer and a certified life plan facilitator. And I've spent about 27 years of my life invested with the IT services community as a sales and marketing leader for a couple large corporations. Jason, how about you?
Yeah, so Jena Knight, like these guys, been in the industry a long time, and started in the early 90s and built and grown and sold a number of IT service companies. My last started 2005, sold it in 2014, and participated in a large roll-up and ran that, and retired from that shortly after, but used EOS as our method of implementation and bringing everything together, and saw the success from that, and just really enjoyed it. And so now I work with other IT leaders and entrepreneurs to help them do the same within their companies, using EOS as the foundation and our other one-on-one coaching tools. And so a lot of fun and working well. So Jameson, I'll hand it back to you.
All right, well, thank you guys. Appreciate the introductions. And now for the highlight of the show today. Thank you, Jena, for joining us. Excited to learn more about everything that you're bringing to the team and really help our prospects, customers, clients, and this community as a whole learn more about assessments and why they matter. We're going to shut up our video. Go ahead and share your screen, and I'll hand it over to you.
Great. Well, thanks for having me today. Super excited to be with the ConnectStrat community, and hopefully you'll find these resources helpful. Our discussion, our topic is a workplace assessment right for your MSP. So we're going to delve in, and I'm Jena Knight. I'm an experienced social worker and Kolbe certified consultant. And I'm really excited to be in the workplace. I'm helping people relate to one another better. And I primarily focus on leadership teams and their organizations and improving team health, communication, and performance. I also get the privilege to help organizations develop the right hiring strategy for their immediate and long-term needs. So I'm really passionate about people relating to each other well and getting the best outcomes for their efforts. So it was quite a process for me to decide on what assessment to represent. And so with that in mind, I've kind of prepared this presentation for you. And as you look at workplace assessments, what are you trying to achieve in your organization? What are you trying to protect, and what are you trying to enhance? And so we want to kind of think about these things as we go on our journey together today. So I'm so glad that we can spend some time. We're going to try to use our time really well. So our goals for today are to define some terms, types of assessments, and we're going to highlight the benefits for both business and culture in your organization. And we're going to look at educating on the talent life cycle, and maybe you can identify some pain points as we go through that. Then we're going to define key criteria for selection and EEOC compliance, because we definitely want to stay out of trouble when we start to use assessments. And then lastly, our goal is that you'll leave our time with a scorecard so you can review assessments on your own. So we've got a lot to cover. So I'm going to go ahead and turn off my video, and we're going to get to work. So the right machine matters. So as you look at this Ducati, you might say, hey, that looks a little fast for me, but where are you going? What's the end result you're trying to achieve? So selecting the right assessment for you in your business so you can reach those goals is really important. Okay, so we really want to take a minute to identify some of your top business objectives. Maybe you're already working with a ConnectStrat coach and they've helped you consider where your business strategy is taking you. Maybe you have a 1-year plan, a 3-year plan, a 5-year, 10-year plan, or maybe your marketplace is really disrupted right now and you're still in crisis mode. But where do you see your business strategy taking you? We also want to consider what defines your organizational culture. What about your culture do you love? What unites your people and directs them in the same direction? What are some key core values and attitudes that you hire by or fire by? These are some things we want to think about as we look at assessments. Are there some key contextual factors to consider? Is your organization slated for high growth? Or are you not necessarily pursuing growth? Are you in a high change environment? Do you require a high level of interdependency among your workforce? Or are you a group of primarily independent contributors? Are you looking to grow a remote workforce? Are you looking to build your on-campus staff? These are some contextual things to think about as we look at the world of assessments. So for our time today, we're going to go ahead and define what is an assessment. So in our discussion, we're going to consider an assessment to be a standardized tool and method to evaluate an individual's capabilities and or behaviors to make personnel decisions, and provide development feedback. So again, the tools we look at, we want to consider how useful they are over the lifespan of an employee. Once someone enters into your organization, is that information that you gain from that assessment helpful throughout their tenure at your company? So in general, there's about 3 types of assessments that we see in the workplace. You're probably most familiar with the cognitive assessments, and they focus on our skills, our intelligence, our education, and expertise. Overall, it gauges one's ability to learn. Often they're referred to as general cognitive assessments. They're often a fixed number of questions with a set time frame that you have to complete the test by. And they're normative, so it's a result that is measured up against other individuals' tests. So where did you score in the normative range? So, and then we see personality assessments. They're very popular in the workplace right now. They tend to focus on feeling, preferences, motivations, desires, and emotions, many subjective things. So it looks primarily at the big 5 traits of openness, conscientiousness, agreeableness, extroversion, and neuroticism. One thing we do know about personality is that it is considered malleable, be it through intentional intervention or over time. We do find personality traits change and that they're not fixed. So that's something to consider as we look at assessments. And then we have behavioral instinctive assessments, and they focus on natural talent, innate force, volition, mental energy. These assessments seek to identify natural problem-solving patterns and approaches, looking at how individuals are hardwired, what are their predictive, consistent modes of operation. So why use an assessment? I think we can all agree that the workplace is saturated by assessments. Our current stats say about 82% of companies are using some form of pre-employment assessment test, and I'm sure that's on the rise. 80% of Fortune 500 companies use pre-employment testing. We see about 54% utilize job simulation screenings, and 51% screen for a culture fit and soft skills. So businesses are finding that the use of the assessments are beneficial to their organizations. They're finding that they do improve performance and productivity of their workforce. They're finding that they can save money by investing in some assessments and keep the cost to hire down. So the average cost per hire right now is about $4,000 per position, or 40% of the annual salary. That may be a good metric for your organization to pursue, so you know what it's costing you to replace your workers. And they are finding that they're able to reduce attrition and improve employee retention. Some of the stats say 1 in 4 new hires will leave within the first year. Hiring is a big challenge for every organization. 65% of companies say the people applying for the jobs are not qualified for the jobs. So there's great frustration to get to the right talent. Here's our 2019 average for employee turnover rate by industry. So something to maybe consider where you fall in comparison to all industries. The general employee turnover rate this year is 3.7%. And then in the information industry, 3.1%. With our pandemic times, I know we're having 2020 is quite an anomaly year, so it'll be interesting to see when those stats come out. But it's a good measure to consider, where do you fall in this range of turnover for your organization? So we often find assessments bring great benefit to the culture. And some of those ways that we see the benefits to the culture is through providing a common language and enhanced communication opportunity. I've heard it said that by bringing assessment and the language of that assessment, it brings the unseen into the visible. So now we know things about our coworkers that we didn't know before. And so it really helps us increase not only our own self-awareness, but it also promotes understanding those who are different from us. And it helps us create context and categorization for behavior. So we have a way to promote positives, and we have a way to recognize what the negative behaviors are in our workplace more easily. We often find that assessments can provide an objective and safe way to gather feedback, so we can recognize issues and address them in a proactive way. So we're just going to take a minute now and look at the talent life cycle. It might be something you're familiar with. Maybe you work with an HR professional, or maybe there's someone who wears that hat within your organization, but often we have some specific pain points throughout the talent life cycle. So we want to start over here in this blue box where we see needs and talent planning. So being able to think about your organization's needs for hiring, be it for this month or next quarter or for the year, being able to project those hiring needs is very tricky. So having people dedicated to that within your organization can be very powerful, be it leadership or a hiring committee that can help build job analysis, job descriptions, and define roles and expectations clearly so you can enter into the hiring market. We see here in the recruitment and selection process, this is where we see a lot of assessments come into play, and primarily the cognitive assessments and behavioral and instinctive assessments. Perhaps you have a hiring strategy. So when you use an assessment at this stage, you can often move towards interviewing your top candidates with not just understanding what their resume says or their CV and what they say their cognitive abilities and experience are, but it can give you a more objective measure of what type of activity or competency that they bring and can bring to your team. And then we see here in the green, the orientation and onboarding. That's been a really popular phrase in the hiring world, onboarding and candidate experience. And we find that in this area where you're trying to assimilate your new hire into your culture and your teams, that often assessments for personality are used here to kind of unearth a little more personal information about your candidate and understanding how they communicate, some of their preferences and motivations there to help them blend within your current culture. Then we see in the skill development in the purple where we find training and leadership development. We see that there is a need among the job candidates to know that they have area and opportunity for growth within the organization. So I'm not sure where you see your company's approach to training and developing emerging leaders, but knowing an assessment can provide insight to who is a potential leader, or are they someone who is poised to be cross-trained among multiple departments, or able to approach training in a way that meets specific needs for their cognitive or behavioral or personality approaches. So we can find assessments can work really well to enhance that areas. We see here in the performance evaluation, knowing not just how well someone is performing in the role, but we can also use our assessments to see if the role is changing. Often I find with clients who are in a high growth mode that the roles, particularly at the top, are often being adjusted as far as responsibilities and requirements for success in that role. So we can look at that at the quarterly or annually on an annual basis, but not just looking at what talent your employee is bringing, but what are you saying you expect of them. And then we see, lastly, in our talent cycle, is the succession planning. So being prepared at the top for your exits is very critical. Do you have clear job expectations and roles defined even for your highest leaders? We don't want to think people will leave our organizations, but inevitably they do. But are we prepared and able to replace them with top candidates, knowing exactly what our needs are for our organization? So hopefully by exploring this talent development cycle, you're able to determine maybe some areas you could focus more energy or refine to get better results. And I think we all agree with Jim Collins, the author of Good to Great. You may be familiar with this quote. It often gets overlooked as he talks about having the right people on the right seat on your bus, but he starts off that train of thought with first who, then what. So we know if we have the right people, then the what can be pretty vague. If we know we have the right quality people, they should be able to adapt to whichever direction you navigate your bus. So we want to consider 3 criteria to help you find the best tool to meet your company's needs. We want to look at validity, adverse impact, and cost. So what validity matters? Does the assessment measure up? Hopefully it's on target. Some questions you may ask as you think about validity is the assessment approved by the American Psychological Association or by another agency that governs it, knowing that it's been tested? And then does it measure what it says it measures consistently and accurately? That criterion, that cognitive ability, that personality trait, and your instincts. Is it measuring consistently and accurately? Does it clearly provide retest data to determine the stability of the result over time? Many popular indexes are not testing over long periods of time. It demonstrates that they're not looking for the information to be valuable beyond 1 year. So that's a concern as we think about how we can use the information over the lifetime of an employee within an organization. So here we have some popular tests that are in use. We see the predictive index self-A, and then we here in the blue, our correlation coefficient demonstrates the percent of accuracy at 1 year. And then we see a decline here in the predictive A, self-A at 5 years. And then we see the Kolbe actually increases at the retest over a period of time of validity. And then we have the DISC Classic. And then the red is the Myers-Briggs type indicator. So knowing if the test that you're using, the assessment, if they are looking to have a long-term stability in their result. Adverse impact. This is a hot topic. We want to be sure the assessment does not lead to discrimination. Our chart here demonstrates the number of charges that were given to the EEOC for discrimination in 2019. It's quite staggering to really look at this chart closely. We want to consider, with adverse impact in mind, is the assessment EEOC compliant, meaning the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission? Do they approve it? Has it been proven to be unbiased over gender, race, and age? Does the use of the instrument lead to disproportionate hiring outcomes? So we want to be mindful of some of these EEOC standards. Again, to be EEOC compliant, the tool must demonstrate job relatedness, that the skill or competency measured by the assessment is necessary for job success or meets business necessity. It cannot have a disparate impact on protected groups, including religion, national origin, age, gender, handicapped, etc. So we want to be sure that we're not accidentally singling out certain groups. The test used for employment selection cannot be based in the abstract or the subjective. The method must be predictive or show significant correlation to important elements of work behavior. So this gets where it's tricky when we're looking at personality as far as at a hiring or a pre-employment access. So we want to keep that in mind. And then tests should be written so that someone with a 9th grade reading level can understand it. Additionally, be aware of math questions, as these can discriminate against education level or national origin if English is not someone's first language. So again, if you're going to use cognitive or general cognitive assessment, you want to be sure you're using it correctly. Same with personality. or behavior. We want to use the assessments as they're designed. So cost: will return on investment deliver long-term and short-term wins for your organization if you choose to invest in an assessment? Is the assessment tool useful throughout the talent cycle, or is it a one-hit wonder? Sometimes we've heard some of the personality assessments to be as accurate as astrology. So we want to be sure that the use of the tool does have an impact on our hiring and our retaining of employees. Is it sticky? Do the findings from the assessment impact real business decisions? Can you hire? Can you fire? Can you promote based on the information that you gain from the assessment? And does it impact your company culture? Does it improve communication? Does it minimize conflict? Does it give language that can enter into your everyday interactions? Is it able to impact employee performance and retention for the long term? Do your employees feel that the information they gained about themselves through the assessment helps them do better work and get better results? Is it easy to incorporate the assessment into your current hiring processes? Is it easy to implement? Is it easy to maintain? These are some things to consider as we think about value and cost investment. So we've really covered a lot of information, but the information that we've covered hopefully will help you build a scorecard as you look and decide which assessments would meet the needs of your organization. So first, we identified the types of assessments with the C meaning cognitive, the P for personality, and the BI for behavior and instincts. And then we looked at validity, adverse impact, cost and value, and then the talent cycle. I represent the Kolbe assessment, and one of the reasons I chose to use this tool is because it ticked all the boxes. But I would want to encourage you to go and look at other assessments as well, but I wanted to take a minute to show you and share a little bit more why using the Kolbe A index can make an impact for your organization. And well, it's proven to be valid, reliable, and 90% accurate over 15 years, meaning the score you receive on your Kolbe A index is accurate, plus or minus 1, for over 15 years. It is EEOC approved for hiring use. It's been proven to be unbiased because it's looking at individuals' instinctive problem-solving approaches, looking at how they're hardwired and approach problem-solving. So, and then we also see that the Kolbe cost value is able to bring a return throughout the talent life cycle. Let's see. We can use the Kolbe A tool and other Kolbe tools to define job requirements. We can use it at the hiring in selection. We can use it to help build culture and language and understanding. We can use it, the Kolbe A, to develop and train leaders. And we can use the Kolbe A to make sure our key employees are performing their jobs well, and we can even adjust their role alignments if need be, if we need to improve the role. We can use the tool to determine if we lose someone at the top, who would we want to replicate? So we've covered all of our information. I think we met our goals, but if we have any questions,
all right, I'm jumping back in, Jena. Thank you. And Brett and Fred, I think Jason's on as well. Any questions, Brett, that I think you'd had a couple come in.
Let's see, I'm going through. How does Kolbe, if you know this, compare to some of the other tests like DISC or the predictive index?
Do you, what do you mean, how does it compare? I think it compares as far as test retest, that they are testing to show that it's a stable result, that you can count on it for a long period of time. But I believe it is measuring different aspects of each individual. It's not measuring how your expectations. It's not measuring your perception of other people and their expectations. And the Kolbe is simply looking at how do you do things, and what will you do and what won't you do if free to be yourself.
Excellent.
I think Fred, you had a question as well around talent development cycle, I believe.
Yeah, there was a question about understanding how can Kolbe remove some bias, and I think you were just kind of leaning into that. So if you're having a performance challenge or a conflict on a team, do you find that Kolbe is better to help suss out whether there's an inherent bias that you're bringing to the table?
Yes, I do think Kolbe is actually an excellent tool to kind of unearth some of what I would call a cognitive bias, where like you have an instinctual way of approaching problems, but perhaps your coworker approaches a problem very differently, and you tend to collide because your methods are different. So we often can come in and help coach in the sense that we can help set an idea or a standard for a result, but find maybe where we can adapt the process, where someone can work, do their best work and make their best contribution, even if that method looks different than their coworker. So it can give a lot of insight. And we do find the theory helps remove just some of that frustration where we miss individuals, like we're just so very different that you can just kind of sense that tension with certain people. Sometimes it's our family, sometimes it's in our workforce, but just where you're just not communicating, you're just missing each other. So we can help with that.
Excellent. Any other questions?
Yeah, if someone took a Kolbe test, say 5 or 10 years ago, would you expect a different result if they took it again, or is this a fairly consistent measurement?
The results, so one of the things I like about Kolbe is that they are about the statistics. So they're testing at 5, 10, 15, and they're are releasing some 20-year statistics that they are proving to be plus or minus 1 the same. So, you know, usually it's within the same range, if that makes sense. So it's not going to change to where it's dramatically different. Like your profile says you're a different, you know, you're approaching problems completely different now. Usually it is the same. I actually had an individual recently take the test twice, and it was plus or minus 1 in one area. So.
Excellent.
That's all we have that came in, Jameson.
All right. Well, thank you, Jena, for joining us. Very informative. I'm going to post this up on our resources page so that we can share it out and hopefully get some more questions there. So we're always willing to answer questions and communicate with folks on our Facebook page or via the website. Reach out to us, connectstrat.com. We're all available. Jena is part of the team and is available to answer questions as well. So thank you for joining.
Thank you.
Thanks all.